And there's certainly something rotten in the state of Victoria. This week, the Daniel Andrews government enshrined into its constitution, the Victorian Constitution, a law banning fracking, OK? Someone who was brave enough to stand up to this insanity is a good friend of this show, the Liberal Democrat member for South East Metro, David Limbrick. He joins us now. David, how are you, mate?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Look, good. Great to see you. Now, take us through this, though. They've enshrined an anti-fracking thing into the Victorian Constitution. You spoke against it. You voted against it. Tell us what is wrong with it.
This is like Victorian Labor's discovered the secret of political immortality. And so to do that, what they've done is they've taken this sip from the unholy grail of constitutional entrenchment. What it means is that they've put a policy position into the Victorian Constitution. We're the only state to have ever done something like this. And it makes it very, very difficult for future governments to ever remove this. Now, because they need a 3/5 majority. And what this means is that, you know, we get the political party of the day able to rule from their political grave in the future. And hardly anyone stood up against this. There was only 4 members of parliament that stood up against it because everyone was so afraid of being associated with the bogeyman of fracking, which, you know, by the way, is already prohibited in Victoria anyway.
Rita.
Well, they wouldn't have been able to do this, the Dan Andrews government, without the support of the coalitions. We've got Liberals, Nationals voting for this insanity. Explain that. Explain how they can completely take a knee to the Andrews government. Where is the opposition in Victoria?
Well, many of them spoke against this. You know, they said, you know, this is a crazy idea going into the Constitution, but they supported it anyway. And the reason was this entire bill really was about, you know, trying to skewer the opposition, and they totally fell for it. I mean, you know, I said in my speech that they spoke against it, and then, you know, curled up in the corner like a punch-drunk boxer and threw in the towel. I mean, this is an absolutely terrible and terrifying precedent. I mean, they're worried about being associated with this fracking bogeyman, but, you know, shouldn't we be more worried about this setting a precedent for all these, you know, zombie Labor policies ruling us, you know, for eternity into the future? I mean, we have to take a stand on this.
But just focusing on fracking, there seems to be this massive stigma, particularly in Victoria, now elsewhere in the country too. But this is something that the Obama administration used to great effect to give America energy security. Why is it in Australia that we are so backward in our attitude to fracking when other parts of the world are using it to great effect?
Well, I mean, I'm quite open-minded about it. You know, it just seems crazy to me in a world where we have so much demand for energy that we're focusing on prohibiting developing energy technologies. I mean, look at what we did with nuclear technology. I mean, that was just crazy prohibiting that. And now we're just left out of the game, left behind in this, you know, this entire technology stream. Australia's just being totally left behind. And, you know, if there's problems with these things, let's develop the technologies and make them better, not just prohibit it and say, well, we're never going to do that. You know, this technology will be bad forever. Imagine if we did that with every new emerging technology. It's just crazy.
Exactly. James.
David, I'm curious about how this all works. I mean, it appears that the Victorian Constitution is insanely easy to amend. I think you said it just takes a 3/5 majority to do that. But how hard is it to, in the future, get rid of something that's in the Constitution? Can the legislature then make a law overturning that because the thing is so malleable, or does it require a court challenge? How does that work? Or is this thing stuck with Victoria forever?
Yeah, so it requires a 3/5 majority to overturn it. But I've spoken to constitutional experts on this. They're questioning whether it's even legally enforceable. So, I mean, in the case that it's not legally enforceable, it's nothing more than legislative virtue signalling. But in the case it is enforceable, then it's this really anti-democratic thing that they're doing here, because a future government that wins based on, you know, some sort of policy, they might not be able to implement that policy because of this Constitution. But, I mean, the idea of putting policies in the Constitution is just crazy. The Constitution's meant to be about the procedures and powers of Parliament, not not a mechanism to entrench party policies to make them difficult for future democratically elected governments to overturn.
And surely, David, that's the point, that a constitution is there, it's set up, it's the rules, it's like the rule book on how Parliament works, and it gives certain rights and obligations. But you mentioned precedent. So the precedent that is set here, if you can whack fracking into the constitution, then next thing it could be, some kind of gender thing. So, it could be or abortion or whatever it might be. Any lefty lunacy, any mad stuff that comes out of the Dan Andrews, think tanks suddenly finds its way into the Constitution.
Well, I'm terrified that this is exactly what's going to happen. I mean, do you really care about a policy now? You don't care about it unless you want to put it in the Constitution, surely, right?
That's right.
This is where we're heading here. I mean, this is a terrible, terrible precedent. I'm very disappointed at all of the MPs that supported this, knowing full well that this was a big mistake, and they should never have done so.
James?
I just want to switch gears for a second and ask about how things are going with the pandemic down in Victoria. I've seen that they're now extending the state of emergency through the end of the year, when the federal government says that by October, everyone who wants one should have been vaccinated. What's happening with the state of emergency, and is Victoria going to be the last place in the world to come out from under the doona?
Yeah, well, we had a vote on the state of emergency last week. The government asked for 9 months. They needed 3 crossbenchers to support it. The Greens, Fiona Patten and Animal Justice Party supported the government again, and they got 9 months what they wanted, so till December. I mean, I put in an amendment. So one of the things that happened during the housing tower lockdowns in Victoria is the Victorian Ombudsman recommended, some very basic protections for human rights for people detained under these emergency powers. I put up an amendment to guarantee access to fresh air and exercise for people that were detained under these powers. They voted against it. Can you believe? So we have the Greens voted against fresh air and exercise for people detained. I mean, this is just outrageous.
Is evil. Rita.
Oh, I can completely believe it, and I'm not surprised those crossbenchers, again, after making some noises in the media, gave Labor precisely what they wanted. Now, you've got into a bit of a tiff on social media recently with Michael O'Brien, the Liberal opposition leader here. Just tell us about that, and what do you think about the idea that Peter Credlin could be a
the
future
Peter
leader of
Premier
the state?
Peter.
Well, look, I mean... I got into a bit of a tiff with him about this constitution bill, actually. I was upset that he was calling out, I think it was Fiona Patten, about being a hypocrite, and I was very upset with them supporting this constitution bill, and I thought they were hypocrites too. So, but, as to who's a good leader for the Liberal Party, I'll leave that to the Liberal Party. That's their problem.
But you have been sort of the opposition with the anti-conversion bill, for example, which had all sorts of nasties in there, particularly as far as trans policy, about completely changing the definition of gender. A lot of feminists were really perturbed by some of the changes in that legislation. Again, the coalition voted for them, really put up very little opposition. You voted against it for a number of reasons, and again on this fracking legislation, you've become your profile has really increased with the Liberals being so weak in Victoria.
Look, I've just done what our party's always done and defend the principles of liberalism. We're here to defend the rights and liberties of Victoria, and we're not going to budge from that. And if we have to do that alone, we'll do it alone. But I'd prefer more allies. But if the Liberal Party wants to, go ahead with this, constitutional graffiti and support these other policies, then, that's their choice, I suppose. I can't tell them what to do.
David Limbrick, thanks so much. Liberal Democrat, member for South East Metro, thanks so much for coming on Outsiders. Some rare common sense from Victoria. Seriously, the Liberal Party, honestly, so disappointing. Anyway, coming up, he brought us such joy, but now it's all sorrow as they cancel Dr. Seuss. Just ask James Morrow in a tick.